You asked me to drop every concept of other and God, so I did. Then I abandoned trauma and embodiment too. Love is not a story. Now I sink into the infinite physiology of light, my true flesh. This stillness in my chest is an unbroken pour that does not flow from there to here, but quivers in the void, a braid of black lightning. What a line. The taste is beyond name, thought, and breath. I call it sweet wine, but that is the language of fools and lovers whose tale is drowned in silence. I will never know who tilted fullness into emptiness and made the starry rim of this cup overflow with a wonder no longer called me. But I still say, thank you, friend. I still ask, was there a journey in that pour, or have I always already arrived at the tavern of awakening? That was Fred LaMotte, and welcome, Fred LaMotte, to the Institute for Advanced Astonishment podcast. And Fred, maybe we could tell everyone, my Wi-Fi went off in my place, and so I'm in a restaurant called Tursa Ojo, which is the Third Eye restaurant, perfectly appropriate for this podcast, the Third Eye restaurant in San Marcos, Guatemala. And welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm without my wife too. She left and went to Delaware. And so I'm babysitting. I'm babysitting two dogs. And so you may be hearing from them, but my wife is coming back in a week. So thank you. I love that poem you just read. I can't believe I wrote it. Where did you find it?
Was that an old one or a new one? I'm not sure.
Oh, I vaguely recognize it. I think it's from my last book, but it ends with the line Tavern of Awakening.
Yes.
And that's the poem the poem that you asked me to read today. Make some of your people mad. It's called Tavern of Awakening.
Perfect. Maybe I'm just going to do a tiny intro because last time you and I talked, we did a podcast called The Philosopher and the Monk with my friend RJ.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun and it was amazing. This podcast is called the Institute for Advanced Astonishment. And I know you know what Advanced Astonishment is, that mystical awakening that we're trying to take the religion word out of it and call it Advanced Astonishment. And we take the M in astonishment and put it to the third power, sort of like equals MC squared. So the M has a 3 above it, and it keeps me focused on these 3 M's: matter, medicine, and mind training. But you can go anywhere with mystical experience or meditation or music, or there's so many M's you can go with. But matter, I thought we could focus on today a little bit. Matter and the difference. What is the nature of matter? And medicine, your poems are medicine. They're like little astonishment medicine that totally brings you to your heart, to the core. And then the third M is mind training. And what we focus here on is, we imagine somebody out there struggling and they've been meditating for 40 years and they tried all the yoga classes and they're doing everything and they can't find this non-dual advanced astonishment state, and they're ready to give up. And Fred LaMotte's here to give us some tools on how to figure it out. So it's mainly focused on what's most effective, less stories, most effective, most useful, and what really works to let people uncover this essence of what they really are. And no better time than when your wife is out and the dogs are home.
And I just realized you want me introducing my new book, and I don't even have it. So just a second. just in time, contradict
Perfect.
everything by showing you my new book. And it's got a picture of Mary Magdalene on the cover. She's the most beautiful being in my life. And so there you go, religion. But now I think maybe after what you said, I should probably start by reading you a poem from this book called The Tavern of Awakening.
That would be great. And speaking of religion, just for a quick interjection, if we can, and I know you can, and I know you do in all your poems, if we could take those symbols of what Mary represents and Jesus and Buddha and just make them, for the atheist or someone that's on the fence, make them understand what it really means, as it did. Because I threw it all out, the baby in the bathwater, I threw it all out as a skeptic until I realized what they really meant. So if that could be the focus plus your poems, we're gonna move the ball forward.
Well, okay. So we're going into this season of Samhain, or Halloween, the Celtic New Year, bending toward the darkness. So I want to talk about that too, because these are dark times on earth. But there's no better time to become the light. But first of all, I want to get back to this Tavern of Awakening that you just talked about.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, we'll see here. Okay.
Tavern.
For all your friends who've been struggling in yoga studios for 40 years. I got bored with spiritual practices. Inhale, counting 5. Hold, counting 3. Exhale, 7. This isn't prayer, it's arithmetic. Why not just dive into 0? I can't lie in corpse asana 2 minutes without getting anxious about tomorrow. Is there a coyote pose? A wounded raven asana? That bronze yogini over there in her bikini's been sitting in full lotus over an hour. She's still smiling. Did she get a better mantra? On your in-breath, think, breathing in. On your out-breath, breathing out. But why not think, my grandmother rides her tricycle through golden atoms of intergalactic chicken broth. I took these complaints to the master, who just laughed and said, when did you actually see me doing any of this crap? Then he threw his arm over my shoulder and led me to the Tavern of Awakening, where everyone gets instantly drunk by practicing absolutely nothing. Nobody knows who's giving the party or why. Lovers just show up with big empty cups and dance a mambo line all night, swigging from a stars whose light won't arrive for 1,000 years. And just before dawn, he whispers in my ear, don't call me master anymore, call me friend. Then he gives me all the advice I'll ever need for free. Honor your body. It's a garden of ancient weddings. Christ kisses Magdalene here, where your rib is missing. Be a flute at Krishna's lips. He'll breathe music through you. When you bow to your own heart. Its pulse is the hum inside all names of God. Now take off your shoes, walk softly over the earth, and pulverize diamonds with your whirling.
That's medicine right there. Now, for the skeptical, just for fun, what do you mean Magdalene kisses Jesus? What are you saying to the atheist on the plane next to you? You're on a flight and you're writing that poem, and the atheist says, what are you talking about? Jesus and Magdalene and a kiss and Krishna?
So in one of the most ancient and universal traditions of poetry, the mystical poets, the troubadours, the mystics of divine love. You find them in India, Mirabai, as well as male poets, but many of them are female poets, the mystic Kabbalistic poets, the Sufis, the troubadours, European mystics in the Christian tradition, many of the saints who wrote poetry, the Song of Songs in the Bible, Song of Solomon. They're these very sensual love songs, very sensual love poems. And in the Gnostics, the early Christian Gnostics, they held as the highest sacrament in the church, their church, what they called the sacrament of the bridal chamber, where the feminine and the masculine met and became one energy in the heart. It's a secret place in the heart. Now, the essence of yoga, the secret tradition of Hatha yoga, what you're really doing in all those yoga studios with your bronze bodies that are always more perfect than yours, and you're thinking, oh my God, when am I going to? And well, what Hatha yoga really is Ha refers to the sun, the solar principle. Ta is the feminine, the lunar principle. And they unite in the spine, Ida and Pingala, the male and female energies that flow through the nervous system and up through the vagus nerve, and they twine and they come up the central channel called Sushumna when they're united. And I know that sounds esoteric, but guess what? It's the basis of Western medicine. It's the caduceus of Hermes. It's the double spiral helix going up that sword of Hermes. That's health, and that's matter. So our material body is made out of Shiva and Shakti. In the Western tradition, we could call them Christ and Mary, the divine female and the divine male, these intertwining opposites, dancing, always at opposites. And that's why sometimes I get a little bored with non-dualism. Because people are seeking this sort of static state, and they don't realize that the one is also two, and it's constantly vibrating. Physicists have found that the vacuum state, the nothing that is everything, is really just bubbling over with virtual photons and virtual electrons. That's where energy comes from. It just comes gushing out of the vacuum. There was a beautiful mystic named Ricebrook, one of the Christian mystics.
My favorite.
Oh, good. Ricebrook was the one who said that God is a wilderness. It's a wilderness of the Godhead. And when you go deep into meditation, you enter the wildness of the Godhead. And it's not just a stable nothing. It's nothing dancing with itself as you and me. So when I meet the goddess, she is the Shakti, the divine energy of the silence, who is Shiva, or Christ, wedded to Magdalene. The cosmic male always beholds with astonishment the dance of his paramour, the goddess. She's the one who creates all this out of her dancing. So
you're saying this is for a skeptic, this is a physics of what's really going on. They're just words. Don't think of a hippie 2,000 years ago with sandals on, and don't think of yourself. What saved me was when Joseph Campbell talked about Narcissus, and I realized I didn't look for pictures of Narcissus or wonder if he really existed. I finally realized, wait a minute, that is, for me, that's an archetype or a metaphor for me to understand something that I'm going through, and so is Jesus, and so is Shakti, and this is the true physics. Only they're words that have this religious charge to them, that might make an atheist push away. And you're showing the male and the female, the goddess and the strangers, pilgrims.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, we don't underestimate the personhood of every
Yes.
one of us. So when you really dive into that infinite ocean, you can't be always saying, no, 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 don't get personal with me. Come on, man, don't get personal now. It's all the self. It's all the self. Don't get personal. Guess what? Whatever you call God,
Yes.
loves to play in the feminine and the masculine, the past and the future. And this whole universe is like a kaleidoscope, right? Billions of shivers, slivers, and shards of glass. And somehow it all comes into this beautiful hologram so that each is every other. It's all one. And yet with each turning of the kaleidoscope, there's a completely unique pattern that includes everything else.
The multiplicity in the oneness, which is the Trinity. Yeah, and everything.
In Buddhism, it was called the Indra, the net of Indra. Yes. So it's like you have this net, beautiful Halloween image, a spider web, right? Yes. So the moon is up there, and see this spider web. And at every point in the spider web, there's a raindrop, okay, that's reflecting the moon. And each reflection of the raindrop reflects all the other raindrops. And each one reflects all the others. Billions and billions and worlds in one reflection, all one, and yet each one itself. So I did, way back in the early 1970s, before the Da Vinci Code and all that stuff, I actually, in southern France, was meditating in these cathedrals and these pilgrim churches, ancient, before Gothic cathedrals. And they were all based in holy places that had been devoted to the mother goddess. I had been with my teacher, Mahesh Yogi, learning meditation, learning to teach meditation. And I went to him, this was way back there, 50 years ago. And I said to Maharishi, I said, yeah, I want to be a Vedic scholar. I want to come to India and study the Vedas and become. And he said, no, you don't. No, you're a Westerner. You don't need all that. Take this back into your own tradition, find it in your own tradition, and play with it there. Don't try to be an Indian. You don't have to be a Hindu. So I went, and I just wanted to find the essence of my own tradition. I had this deep longing, and I loved the Gregorian chant. Yes. And I no longer wanted to reject it all. I just wanted to experience the essence of it. And so I was in this very ancient pilgrim church called Vézelay in this little town in southern France. I had no idea of the story of Mary Magdalene. And there were her bones and her relics and her burial place. And it turns out she had come to southern France. She was the one who brought the Christ consciousness to Europe after the death of her beloved paramour, Jesus. Not that they were married and had kids and all that, but that they were like a male and female spiritual couple, teachers. And she brought that to the West and lived in a cave there. And I just had this experience of her. And here I wasn't a Catholic or anything like that, but here I was having this mystical experience of a Catholic saint. But she's much more than that. She's a manifestation of Shakti. So, and the fact that you plunge into the ocean of non-dualism does not mean that you can't meet other persons there.
Right.
So she's this amazing person. And I'm not just going to say, oh, she's an archetype.
Right,
not,
right.
oh, she's a person, like Jesus is a person, like Krishna is a person, and they're all dancing together in the ocean. They're all waves of the ocean, inviting us to be a wave. And you know what she said to me through her gaze? Her gaze was very disturbing at first. Sometimes in some portrayals of her, it's very severe. This is a beautiful, beautiful painting of her. She's standing on the shore by her boat, rudderless boat, washed up on the beach. But when she gazed at me, her gaze brought me back to the non-dual experience, because you know what her gaze said to me?
What?
Love yourself. Before thou shalt love the Lord thy God, before love thy neighbor, before any of the other commandments, there was an original commandment that has been forgotten. Love yourself.
Yes.
And in that love, how can you love God if you don't have the ocean of the divine love in your heart?
I remember the day I experienced what you're talking about right there, and I ran to RJ's place that you met on the last podcast, and I ran in and I said, RJ, I can't believe it. It's all about falling deeper and deeper in love with ourselves. And we both were just in such bliss over that. Like, my God, it's about fall. And as an atheist, I guess I was blocking my own light. I couldn't love myself. I kept looking and looking. I mean, I loved life, but I couldn't see this beautiful, pure love that was underneath the cosmic dust. I can get to cosmic dust and Carl Sagan and Neil Tyson, but I couldn't get to what you're talking about. I was right there. I knew there was something there, but I couldn't break through the ice until I turned inside. I was always looking outside.
Beautiful. Yeah. That crystal, to me, it's a jewel. It's like the jewel of a priceless jewel that we've all been looking for. And where is it found? Right in that place where our rib is missing.
Yes.
And we've been searching everywhere for it. No. Go deeper into that wound. Go deeper into that darkness.
Yes.
And it will just explode with light. And, I wanted to share a couple of words that
Sure.
They just came to my lips, to my breath this morning as I woke up. That's where poems come from very often.
Oh, I had a friend that wanted me to ask you, and that's perfect timing. Where do they come from? Do they come after you meditate? Do they come from Lectio Divina, where you're quiet and maybe reading a few lines? Where do they come from?
For me, it's meditation, and sometimes on the verge of sleep, when I'm coming out of sleep or coming out of meditation, that first breath is very much the breath rising from the silence, from the breathless. It's recreation through the word, the word of God. The universe was created through the word. That's what all the scriptures say. And the physicists say that it's all vibration. It's all word coming out of silence. In the beginning was the word. Well, when I'm deep in the silence, it's from that the breath and the word arise. But it's given. To me, that's the meaning of grace. Talk about a religious term. The grace is the fact that you are breathed. You're not breathing. Breath is not taken. You don't take a breath. No. You receive a breath.
That's great. I love that.
Very often, early in the morning, as I come out of sleep, there are these words floating on the breath, and they become a poem or a message or something like that. Well, today, very dark times, and yet very mysterious and beautiful times. Not only is the world troubled, but we're about to go into the full moon and into the period of Samhain, or Halloween, we called it. It's the ancient Irish New Year.
Yes.
And it's the renewing time when we return to the dark. We turn to the dark. The dark is not bad. The dark is the feminine womb of matter. So anyway, these are the words that came. In a season of lengthening shadows, let us not just pray for peace, but breathe peace. Breathe peace from the heart of being. Let us not resist the dark, but embrace it with our groundless depth. I say again, darkness is not the opposite of light. Darkness is the womb of light. Be a golden leaf. And as you pass through the thin, sacred threshold of Samhain, remember that in ancient Ire, this holy time was the new year, the beginning. Time to bathe the dead in tears of presence and bear back the bones of your autumn ancestors into seeds of spring. A time for weeping, a time for laughter, but between and ever between, a season of silence.
Beautiful. So for someone who hears that and they feel something, but they're not quite, they can't silence that monkey chatter, what do you recommend? Do you recommend going into nature? Do you recommend obviously listening to these kind of poems, listening to the Sufis, looking at a mountain, looking at something boundless or immovable like a mountain or the sky? What works for Fred LaMotte?
See, all those things ultimately are out there, right?
Right.
So you have to turn and go to the place where the mountain comes from. The place where the breath arises. You said looking at, but you have to go to the place where the looking comes from. Even the looking comes.
Like that, is that the Francis of Assisi line? What you are, what you're looking for is where the look is, what is looking. Something like that. Yeah.
But to make it practical, I would say become aware of the axis gently, without force. Become aware of the axis mundi, the axis of the world, but it's really your own spine.
Yes.
From your sacrum, which connects you to the earth, to the top of your crown, that soft spot you had when you were a child.
And that's great.
Sealed it over with bones. No, don't let it seal over. Let it open up again and be soft. And thread, there's a hollow thread, a little thread of silken light passing from the sacrum to the crown, connecting you to a star. Millions of stars above. Your breath rises and falls on that silken thread, and just return to that breath and feel it rising and falling until it becomes centered in the heart. And that is the place where you will experience tremendous love. Tremendous love.
That's perfect.
Matter, mater, breath, and consciousness at that place are the same. There's no difference between mind, matter, and breath. Place.
So someone who's struggling, if they could find a quiet place somewhere in their house, or take a walk to a park or somewhere quiet, hide in the woods, go anywhere away from people, and just breathe and totally trust and let go, Of course, if you take a little medicine, it helps. If you take a Fred LaMotte poem or two, that's a medicine. You can just listen to a poem or read a poem, and then just let it digest inside you. Let it center inside you, and be totally quiet, and follow your breath.
Yeah. Well, and once you develop an inner practice, I've had some of my most amazing deep meditations on a bus or in a train or in a train station, because I was freed from having to make a mood of it.
Right.
Environment. The whole environment is already that. It's already that energy. It's just a different arrangement of atoms, but the atoms are all made out of the self. The atoms are all consciousness. And so we have these games that we play on ourselves. And sometimes, well, in the Vedic in the ancient Vedic vision of time, we are now getting pretty deep into Kali Yuga.
Mm-hmm.
Yuga means age of Kali. And it's a time that's full of chaos and destruction. And we're seeing that, aren't we?
Yeah, totally.
You don't have to prophesy it anymore. We're in the middle of it.
No.
It's just that it's lengthened out so that when we get into the middle of World War III, we don't realize it's all happening slowly, or the apocalypse. It's all slowly happening all around us. It's just the divine time is not our time. We expect things to happen. Oh yeah, there's the apocalypse, and there's the second coming, and oh yeah, there's the end of the world. No, he's
frogs are falling from the sky. Hold on, that's so.
I love that. That's a great.
Did you see the movie Magnolia when that happened? I mean,
we're seeing, and I was hoping the movie was going to end there because
it was tremendous.
And the little kid is saying, "This is real. This is real."
It was perfect.
That. Oh God.
Paul Thomas Anderson said he was grappling with the death of his father, and death is like frogs falling from the sky. It's so unbelievable when something like your father dies or someone you love, and it's like frogs falling from the sky. It's this event that you cannot believe is happening, yet it's real. It's happening.
And yet, you know what the punchline is?
Yes.
The Vedas say this age of Kali, destruction, this is the age when liberation is most available.
I love that.
It's in the depths, because there's nothing to be attached to. There's nothing that you say, oh yeah, that's heaven around me.
Right. It's not as the seductive power of the world is less because it looks like a nightmare.
And you see all these opposites and you can't figure it out. So your intellect is not trying to I understand it all now. No, you just give everything up and surrender. And it's to that grace, which moves the breath and is the word. So in the Vedic tradition, the word or the name, the vibration becomes very important. If you receive a mantra, that's what it really is, a vibration that brings you back to the self. I won't get into that now, but yes, it's precisely at this time that we have the opportunity to experience the grace. And so I think I would like, if, with your permission, this is very short, but it's the first poem in my new book. So this poem is called Scary.
Okay, perfect.
And the whole book is basically a response to this poem. The world is scary. I'm scared. That's the truth. How about you? The world is in chaos, and I refuse to pretend that I know what to do. You hear me? I'm scared, and I don't know. Yet when I tell the truth, A sacred white buffalo wanders into my heart, and I feel a peace the world cannot give or take away. Do you hear me? Perhaps this is what we can all do together. Be scared. Don't know. Tell the truth.
Beautiful. That's perfect for right this moment. And if we can, maybe just for 5 minutes, let's drill into what you mean by vibration to a skeptic or someone that might not understand. Everyone knows that there is vibration. You cannot doubt vibration. All atheists believe in vibration. So you're saying that maybe when the mind vibrates just a little less, something happens. Maybe when there's a little less distortion or a little less distraction, and you hit this certain frequency that's always there, but you can't hear it because you're vibrating. It's like Buddy Rich is playing a drum solo over this beautiful note. And if you just take the sticks from Buddy Rich and calm him down for a minute, this little monkey, Buddy Rich, you get this beautiful, so it's always there, this vibration. And if you pull out all the vacuum cleaners and all the shut off CNN and Fox and all the blenders in the house and all the babies who are quieted, there's this sound that Fred LaMotte is talking about in every poem, and you can hit it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, it's Gene Krupa playing Sing, Sing, Sing.
I love you say that because my father gave me a Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich drum battle. And I always sided with Buddy, but he loved Gene. So,
yeah. So here's a quote from the Vedas. Tao Bhagavan Shabda Rasahi. In the beginning, the Lord, cosmic Lord, created everything through a stream of sound. Shabda, a stream of sound. So you had this, in the beginning was the word.
Yes.
You have every scripture says this. If you even the
some kind of movement, some kind of
South American, the Popol Vuh, the ancient scripture of the Mayans, begins with the God speaking.
Right. So you're saying in the beginning, there's some kind of perfect love or wholeness, and then with this little movement, it splits. It does something with the vibration, like Meister Eckhart would call Belluccio, or like the boiling up, like you were saying earlier, of this bubbly boiling up like a pot of pasta, and it's and then it's boiling forth, and it's frothing and coming over the pot, and we get this world somehow.
So we settle back into the source of that froth, beautiful. And so the word in the yoga tradition is spanda, from which we get spandex, expand, the English word expand,
yes.
Spanda. And spanda means vibration. And so these waves, so the vacuum, the nothing of that physicists tell us is the source of energy.
Yes.
That nothing has within it these internal, what's called fluctuations of the vacuum. Mathematicians, it's pure mathematics, but it's fluctuating in waves of possibility and probability. Yes. And so it's vibrating. And at some point, they don't know how this happens, these virtual vibrations, these virtual photons or electrons that are in the vacuum, they just manifest. Right. And this is where matter comes from. So is it all just random chaos, or is there some kind of science behind it? Well, in the Vedic tradition, it's the science of sound. And they tell us that someday healing will be done through sound, and people will more and more understand the universe through the vibrations of sound. And so these impulses, this is where we get the mantras. So we follow creation in reverse. What we're actually is we are following the word back into the silence and letting it.
Saying it's like a reverse engineering, sort of like you're going
reverse engineering creation.
Yeah.
It's following the sound back to the shabda, the current that created the universe. So, this is why I became a Quaker when I was looking. I went to seminary and everything, and I didn't like any of the churches, but I loved the Quakers because they sat in silence. But it was a very dynamic silence, because out of the silence would come these words, and they'd rise and speak.
Yes.
And so it was like a recapitulation of the mechanics of creation. You return to the silence, and it's out of that you're recharged, and you come with inspiration, literally.
And to be clear, that silence would be the stillness of the Godhead, sort of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And out of that comes this dance, this.
Yeah. Because silence can also be the silence of shock or the silence of repression. So we're not talking about the silence of you're too scared to speak out. No. We're talking about going into the silence at the source of material vibration. Yes. And there's a cultivation of that silence. There are levels to it. You go deep into it. It's not like, okay, let's all just close our eyes and be silent for half a minute. Have a moment of silence in the stadium before the game starts. No, it's a little.
No, this is the ripple returning to the ocean, the wave returning to the ocean. It's the Godhead, but I hate to use that word for people that might, back up. We can call it the no thing, the nothing, the void.
Source. I love that word, source.
Yeah, source.
Yeah.
And I love what we're doing here. It came to me the other day where what I want to try to do is, I love the word mysticism, but to my 20 years ago skeptical self, I would have shied away from the word mysticism. So I like the idea of taking the mist out of mysticism, removing that misty fog and seeing what it really is. And that's what you're doing right now. And I think it'll be really helpful to someone that's on the fence, or they're right there and they get quiet, but they only see blackness. They don't quite get there yet. And I always say, well, just hold on. You're not. Hamlet said ripeness is all. Ripeness. And I know you're with that, because you just keep blazing out these poems over and over, and you don't have to teach, like, that once they're ripe, they will hear this, or maybe you're trying to hook them. I don't know.
Blackness is beautiful. Blackness is, as I said, it's not the absence of light, it's the womb of light. And so
and you called that matter before. It's the womb of matter, I think you said.
Yeah, well, mater, mother.
Yeah.
Matter bubbles out of that divine darkness where light comes from, and where music comes from. The Vedas, the Vedic scriptures vibrate out of that. And the yogis of the Vedic tradition, they don't see it as religion, they see it as science. And they say that the Vedas emerge from silence and are the basic structures of matter. Within matter, there are these vibrations that are like the formulas, sound formulas. And said that I have a beautiful out of print essay by Heisenberg, Warren Heisenberg. The Heisenberg, one of the great modern physicists.
Uncertainty principle.
Yeah, and he was a Jew, but he loved the beginning of the Gospel of John, where it said, "In the beginning was the Word."
Yes.
Everything, all creation came out of the Word. And he bases his whole essay on that. And he said, you know something? They were right. And Plato was right.
Yes.
And the modern materialists, us guys, are wrong. When we trace physics to its real truth, it's vibrating out of pure intelligence.
So what happened from, Oppenheimer, Schrodinger said there's one mind, And he made it very clear, Schrodinger, a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and Oppenheimer and Max Planck said matter comes from consciousness, and Heisenberg, they all said this. And then what happened from 1930, 40 on to now, we made some kind of, we forgot about that these guys were all mystics. All the Nobel Prize winning physicists were, the quantum mechanics leaders were all physicists.
Yeah,
all the physicists were mystics. Yeah. They read the Upanishads. What happened since then?
Well, I think that it did reach many people. I've been to many symposiums of meditation, and where yogis met with physicists, and it's been an ongoing interpretation of what those guys said. They were just so far ahead of their time. I think that
makes sense.
We tend to look at, what's on CNN,
right?
And that's reality.
We're catching up now. Yeah.
There's an inner evolution going on, and the outer husk is very dry and very peeling and very brittle, and it's all falling apart. But believe me, there's an inner energy that's stirring and growing, an inner consciousness, and it's up to each of us to identify with what we want, because it's very delicious to be negative. Let's not make it's, some people really get off.
It's the default. Sometimes it's the default position, right? How are you? Oh boy, you should have seen the traffic, or oh boy, look at the news, or oh boy, it's always something negative. It's default,
Particularly when there's somebody to blame, when there's some other group to blame.
That's good.
And you can blame any of these groups we've been talking about, any spiritual group, you can blame or you can blame, some people want to blame Israel and other people want to blame Hamas, and everybody loves to have a group to blame. And all that blame does is it makes our own mind more hysterical and gross. And yet it's so delicious to be angry and to blame. It's so delicious. It seems to solve our problem. Just like shooting up might seem, to solve your problem, give you a rush. But eventually you come back to this weary place. So
it's like a hit of sugar. Like you get this little brief high, but you're going down right after.
Yeah, and I found that in addition to my practice, we were talking about meditation practice, but in terms of the moral side and the external behavioral side, I have found it so incredibly important to give up blame.
I love that. That's a good tool that you could offer to the people.
2 years ago, I started, and it was so difficult at first, and I felt guilty about it. Oh no, I'm supposed to blame those guys, and I'm supposed to blame that. When you get out of that judgment and blame, boy, then you begin to radiate the being.
And is that, I would say, all I'm hearing inside me right now is when I woke up, I realized that I have to take full accountability. And I think that is connected to the blame. You can't blame anyone anymore.
Right. Right. And when you do give up that blame, instead of being immersed in that tense little energy that you thought was so important, all those arguments, you go to a different place where you are actually having much better influence in the world. You're radiating from your heart center. Literally, I'm talking about a real vibrational field of energy that's coming out of your heart center. And it's directly related to your metabolism, your physical heart. I'm not talking about some metaphysical heart now. I'm talking about a real energy field that affects your environment. Wow. And look what I'm staring at. The next poem. Let me read it. God, you won't believe it. I don't know how I got here, but there it is.
A new one or an old one?
This is a new one called Soften. Merely by resting in your heart, you soften 1,000 miles of space around you. Those who come near feel the touch of wild cotton, the radiance of 7 pearls threaded on a sunbeam. Their souls begin to orbit your belly button. They enter your invisible garden of presence and taste blood crimson seeds gushing from the pomegranate's core without gashing the husk. Let others make the Hajj or fall on the sword. You just need to be more hollow. Learn to repose in the olive brown shrine of this body. Victorious the mind that surrenders control. Give up seeking and dissolve in the erotic splendor of the void. Let your next exhalation be what pours from the libation cup offered by a dying warrior. A death song swells the throat in a voice that is yours and not yours, like the curl of smoke from a wick just blown out. You return to the lips of the one who says, "Well done." Let your next inhalation be a glittering kiss. Did no one tell you? Your breath is the name of God.
Well, if anyone's wondering why I asked you to come here, that's it right there. Wow. That was so perfect.
Thank you, Ben. Now tell me, how did you get to Guatemala?
So I'll do a 60-second. My whole story really fast is I was a magician who studied under the amazing Randy, the big skeptic, who's in a book. When I became a librarian, I saw a reference book called Who's Who in Hell. And I looked and Randy was in there. My teacher, I said, oh boy. So I pursued master's degree after master's degree and studied, and I felt like I knew the truth through Randy and Richard Dawkins and science, and I threw away all spirituality. And then one day I met another hero of mine who was a great magician, and he said, Randy's not skeptical enough, and you're not skeptical enough. Be a radical skeptic. Be a real skeptic. Be skeptical of matter. Be skeptical. And I went within finally, instead of with that, to universities and books, went inside, like you said, and everything flipped like a sock, turning inside out when you put your hand in it just was a paradigm pop. Everything changed. And then that teacher told me, he travels the world, and he named 3 places: San Marcos, Guatemala, San Cristobal, Mexico, and Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And he said those 3, he traveled everywhere, India and everywhere. And he said those 3 kept him, the community is so beautiful and so strong. It's all about the dream and helping others. And he said, San Marcos for you. And I dropped my job. I quit. I retired and sold my car, sold the house, and sold all my magic and 5,000 books and let go of everything. Came here and went to this restaurant called Tercer Ojo, which is the third eye in Spanish, and fell in love, and then actually moved into the restaurant. So I never left. And I'm in the hotel, the Tercer Ojo, which used to be called Hotel Maya, which is perfect. And and it's built around the Lake Athlon, which Huxley visited I think in the 30s. Very beautiful lake, as good as Lake Como, and it has volcanoes and the mist, and it's so beautiful, and mountains. And 9 out of 10 people here, when I say, some people say life's a dream, I try to say it, bring it down. Some people would say life's a dream. They all say, of course it is. So I found my tribe and my people, and some people are coming here for healing, and some people are healers. So it's a beautiful place to do the podcast and meet people and write the books and make the Institute for Advanced Astonishment. It's just perfect. So that's how I wound up here.
National community? Are they like people from all over the world, or mostly from
people come from everywhere, and they're looking for something at the lake or in the woods here, or they take ayahuasca or some kind of ceremony. Cacao is a big thing. Cacao ceremonies, and the Mayan people are beautiful, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful place. It's like waking up in dreamland. My teacher calls it spiritual Disneyland.
How high? And I mean literally high.
Yes.
What's the elevation there?
Oh, the elevation? I don't know, but we're in the mountains. Oh. And I wake up and look out the window and just see mountains and mist. Out the other window, volcanoes and mist, and the lake, this beautiful lake that pulls people here, like the Ganges, like the river,
So is that the capital city of Guatemala, or
I don't think so. It's more the spiritual bubble of Guatemala. And like my teacher would say, you can see the flyers on some of the walls, and he's very spiritual, and he called it the spiritual wall of bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit and there's a lot of good, and you could find the real shaman or the yogi teacher. They're here, and there's a lot of bullshit,
Right.
But it's a good spot. It's a good spot.
That's why I wrote that poem that I hope didn't offend too many people. Sometimes I satirize, the new age.
Yes.
And it's not that I'm satirizing the truth and the teachings, but there's so much bullshit that's been like constructed around it.
Yeah, you need a discernment, right? You need to be able to discern the difference. Yeah. And it's from going inside.
Yeah.
Can I read my favorite tiny poem of yours that I love? You rewrote this after I reread it with you, and then you rewrote it and made it even better somehow. But I'll read the old version. You might have the new version queued up there. It's very short and so beautiful. And it was my introduction to you. And from that day, I was your friend, and that was it. And this is it. This is my spiritual discipline. I give myself permission to eat whatever is delicious. I act my age, not even 1 moment old. I vow to dance with the perfect stranger every morning. And I love this. You changed these lines here a little bit, but every morning I breathe away the dream and gaze inside, smiling at the radiant mirror of my heart. Then I go out into the world and I embrace my 8 billion lovers, satisfying each one with a feast of light, a taste of wine from the barrel of foolishness, which is a great ending that makes me laugh.
Yeah, I know that
and you
one.
Rewrote that.
Yeah, I think that it has several different versions, but I think yours is the original one. I love it. Yeah. Drinking from the barrel of foolishness is so important. And of course, that's a very sacred tradition with the Sufis and the fools for Christ in the Christian tradition, and the crazy Zen monks in Japan and China.
Holy fool. Yeah, crazy wisdom.
Yeah. And there's a beautiful line from St. Paul, believe it or not, in the New Testament, where he says, the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of men.
That's great. Wait, can I give you a line? I know you love Meister Eckhart. He said a line, I'm going to botch it, but maybe you can fix it. He said, a little tiny ant that's filled up with the divine, with God, is better than anything that any angel could be. That's in itself. Like a little ant that's totally divine, totally. And maybe you can take it from there on Meister Eckhart.
Yeah, I think he went on to say that is a scripture. That is more wisdom than any scripture contains. Is a little ant. It is so full of God that it contains more wisdom than any scripture.
So can you explain that to like just some moron person that doesn't know? And they're trying to get this and they just can't quite, they're so scientifically minded and smart, but they can't understand what that means, an ant full of God.
Well, no, of course I can't explain it, but the way I see it is we were talking about that source of energy. So every particle, every atom, even the part of an ant, is filled with the kaleidoscope of all the wisdom in the universe. And there are some physicists, in fact, who believe that at the center of a proton, center of a single proton, just as at the center of a galaxy, there's a black hole. And that blackness is the same. It's the same blackness, whether it's the blackness of an ant or the center of a proton or the center of a galaxy, and all the information in the universe contained in that silence. It's all pre-existent. The information is there, just like your genes contain, the program of like thousands of ancestors. So that emptiness, this is why the Buddhists talk about emptiness, because at the heart of emptiness and smallness and insignificance, there's tremendous power. The least of things can be the greatest. So that's all I can say about that, except that I think that Meister Eckhart meant it quite literally.
Yes.
That ant contains the vibration, the scripture of the whole universe. Yeah.
Like you would say with Indra's net, and Indra's net had that, or if someone's skeptical, they could look at fractals and see in the fractal, in chaos theory and fractals, you could see everything. Wow. Deeper you go, the more the order is there. Yeah, like a strange order.
Yeah, and I'm the next poem I've got here. You talked about an ant, so I'm already looking. The
script is written. It's written.
It's called Guru. A teacher fills you. A guru empties you. A teacher gives knowledge. A guru awakens the knower. One transmits information. The other transmits wonder without words. Your mind thirsts for certainty. Your heart yearns for breaking open. If the yearning is intense enough, the guru could be a cricket.
That's perfect. That's perfect. You can't write it better than that. So if you had to give, I don't know if you're in the business of giving tools to people, or when you meet with a group at the church. I know you taught philosophy, and I think at a university, right? You taught some kind of classes, and I think you had a group of youth group or something. What advice do you give to someone that's like, Fred, I'm ready to give up. I think your poetry is beautiful. I know you're right, but I can't find it.
I was head of a group, interfaith group, as well as a teacher at Evergreen College, and we used to gather and have very deep silence and guest speakers from many different traditions. And also, I still continue to teach in the philosophy department on an online course.
That's great.
And but it's a world religions course. World religions. I consider it to be wisdom paths. I call it wisdom paths. So I do teach meditation individually, and I have in the past, and I wouldn't even try to give specific instruction, in a podcast without being with a particular person. But I do have also so much respect for the ancient traditions. I try not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so I did study with a very great teacher, and I have been practicing that meditation that he gave me for 54 years, every morning and evening. And so there is no substitute for finding a school of meditation that is the real thing and getting initiated to it and really centering on that practice. The thing is, if it's real, then it's impelled by grace, not by your own effort.
Right.
And so how can the mind liberate the mind when the mind is the problem?
Right.
I mean, we have all these people trying mind control. Now I'm going to do this with my mind, to my mind, but the problem is the one who's doing it to itself. So
I tell that all the time when my teacher told me you have to go within. Now this is James, this is beyond concepts and words, and now you're going to go to the non-conceptual space beyond words. And he went on, and I felt the light. It felt amazing. And he said, so what will you do today on the phone? And I said, I'm going to the bookstore. And he said, why? And I said, I'm going to get a book on how words aren't the way. And I still needed a map. I right away, I grabbed on and said, all right, let's find out about how words aren't it by reading words. And it was the wrong way.
Up there.
Yeah, you're back. Sorry about that. Maybe we should, I don't know if a storm is coming here. Do you have one more poem for the road?
Wow. Yeah, sure I do.
I would love you to stay on until tonight. One day we do an endless podcast and we don't stop.
Okay, so this kind of sums up a few of the things we've talked about, and yeah. Okay, I'll read this little one. It's called B4. Before you are against, tell me what you love. Don't tell me what you are against. Tell me what you love, what you cherish with your whole body. Being against contracts the heart. Being for opens the chest like an orchid bending toward light. Now is the time to depart from the empire of despair and return to the palace of beauty, this human form. The palace of beauty, this human form. One sweet, dark nerve in your solar plexus radiates 1,000 times more power than any opinion. Let this be your worship on a Sabbath morning. For a little while, don't be against anything.
Yes.
Only be for. Be for the sun on the table. Be for the late summer rose. Be for tears and the laughter of children. Wash the whole planet in the foolishness of God.
I love it. The line that stuck with me, because it's like a cloud that comes over these people, is the empire of despair. That's a great way to put it. It's like the evil empire.
Yeah, but it's we who put it on ourselves. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, thank you, man. We have to do this more. Maybe we should do this every week for 10 minutes and just come on and giggle. And
let's do it. If we don't do that before the new year, let's just do one where we just do poem after poem.
Okay, man.
Into the night. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, my friend. I got to get down there and see this place. It's so wonderful to see you there.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. The Third Eye Spiritual Bakery.
Strangers and Pilgrims.
And I will put a link to your book and your old books and your, I think, do you still do the blog site?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll put that up there.
Oh, thank you, man. This has been a delight. And my dogs were good. So bless you.
Now your wife's coming home.
I know the wife and the Wi-Fi are coming back.
The Wi-Fi and the Sufi.
All right.
Thank you, Fred.
Peace.
We'll get to the bottom of it again. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. World.
Bye-bye.